Let me start with this. I'm sitting here telling you about the biggest mess I've ever made in my life, and I still can't wrap my head around how everything went downhill so fast. You know, sometimes you do something without thinking, and you assume, oh, it's just a joke, no big deal. But let me tell you, it was a big deal. It was one of those classic evenings, you know, Vanessa and I were invited to her parents' house for dinner. Her parents are traditional, not in an outdated way, but you can tell they're the type of people who value etiquette. The kind of people who expect you to place your napkin on your lap, not interrupt when someone is speaking, and definitely not crack any casual jokes about marriage or anything that might be considered offensive. Her mom is a genuinely sweet and kind woman, and her dad, well, let's just say he's the strict, reserved type. So we got there, and everything was actually going well. Her dad started talking about how proud he was of us, about the life Vanessa and I had built together. He's a sentimental guy, so he was saying how happy he was that Vanessa married me. I mean, I knew he had always supported us, but you also have to understand how much I hate moments like that. They make me uncomfortable. People look at you, expecting you to say something deep or meaningful, and all you can think about is what you had for lunch. So what did I do? I tried to lighten the mood with a little humor. I don't even think I fully processed what I was about to say in my head. It was one of those moments where words just spill out. I thought it would get a laugh, so I just said it. I looked at her dad, raised my glass, and said, yeah, you know, at first, Vanessa was just a rebound. I was getting over my ex, and she came along, and well, here we are. I laughed. But no one else did. Vanessa froze. Her face shifted from that relaxed smile to something I had never seen before. Her mom blinked a few times like she couldn't comprehend what I had just said. And her dad, he just stared at me, his hand tightening around his glass like he was about to crush it. And that's when I knew. I knew it was bad. But I thought maybe I could just laugh it off, you know? I tried to explain, I didn't mean it like that, seriously. It was just a joke. I mean, that's my thing, right? When I screw up, I try to play it off. But then I looked at Vanessa, and I could tell, she wasn't having it. She didn't say anything. She just stood up, grabbed her purse, and said, I'll be right back. The room went silent. I didn't even look at her parents. I don't even remember what I said after that. I think I just kept apologizing, but they weren't listening. Her dad's face was like stone, no emotion. And her mom looked like I had just insulted their entire family name or something. A few minutes later, Vanessa came back, but her energy was different, cold. She didn't say a single word for the rest of the night. She kept glancing at me, but not in the way she usually did. It was like she was looking at a stranger. We left soon after, and it was awkward. You know that silence when you're in the car with someone, and you can feel the tension, but no one talks about it? That was us. Vanessa didn't say anything. And I just sat there, regretting every single word that had come out of my mouth. But I still didn't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, sure, it was a dumb thing to say. But it was just a joke, right? I tried to start a conversation. I'm sorry, you know it was just a joke, right? But she didn't even look at me. She just stared out the window. The drive home felt like a century. I didn't know it at the time, but that one careless, stupid comment was about to change everything. When we got home that night, I thought things would blow over. I truly believed that Vanessa would get past it, that maybe she just needed a nap or a night's sleep, and we'd talk in the morning. You know, like when you have a little argument or a misunderstanding? I thought I'd apologize properly, and we'd move on. But that's not what happened. I don't even know how long I stood in the kitchen after we got inside, just waiting for her to say something, anything. I kept checking the time, hoping maybe she'd come out of our bedroom and be ready to make things right. But she didn't. I tried texting her a few times, saying, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a dumb joke. But there was no response. And I swear, the longer the silence stretched on, the more I realized, this was worse than I initially thought. At first, I figured she was just upset. I mean, I didn't commit some unforgivable crime, right? I was just a guy who made a bad joke trying to lighten the mood. I kept telling myself, it's fine. We've been together for years. We'll get past this. But as the minutes turned into hours, I started to feel it in my gut, that sinking feeling. Something told me that what I had done wasn't just a small mistake. It was in the air, heavy. It wasn't just her silence. It was the weight of everything that had happened. I could tell she was thinking. And not in a good way. When we first met, Vanessa was the type of person who always shared what she was thinking. She didn't bottle things up. So when she was completely silent, I started to panic a little. Finally, I decided to go into our bedroom. This was the moment I could fix everything, right? I couldn't just pretend everything was fine. So I knocked, opened the door, and saw her sitting there, her back turned to me. And I felt this awful, sinking fear. I said, Vanessa, please talk to me. I'm really sorry, okay? I didn't mean it like that. It was just a dumb joke. I was trying to keep things light, but now I see how much it hurt you. She turned around, and for the first time all night, she looked at me. But it wasn't the look I was expecting. It wasn't the look of someone about to forgive me. It wasn't even anger. It was just cold. Her eyes were distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. And that scared me more than anything. She took a deep breath, and I braced myself for anything. But instead, she just said, I don't think I can do this anymore. And then silence. Right at that moment, my heart clenched. What was she saying? Was she really thinking about ending everything over this? I tried to salvage it, desperately. I pleaded with her. Come on, Vanessa, don't do this. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid comment. I don't want to lose you over this. But she just shook her head. She had made up her mind. I can't ignore the way you made me feel, she said quietly. You humiliated me. And you were right about one thing, it was just a joke to you. But it wasn't to me. The silence in the room was suffocating. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to fix this. And the worst part? I didn't even realize I had broken something until it was too late. Minutes passed, and I just sat there, staring at my phone, hoping she would text me first. Finally, after what felt like hours, I couldn't take it anymore. I sent her a message. Vanessa, we need to talk. As simple as that. I thought it was time to face whatever was happening. I wanted to fix it. I was desperate to fix it. The reply came. A few minutes later, I was at her mother's house. I don't know what to say to you right now. That crushed me. I knew her mother's house wasn't far, but the fact that she wasn't even at our home, that she didn't even want to talk to me there, spoke volumes. That's when the weight of it all really sank in. This wasn't just some argument. This was about something deeper. Something I had probably ignored for too long. I set my coffee down on the counter, grabbed my keys, and drove to her mother's house. I didn't even think twice. I knew that if I stayed home, I would just keep spiraling, lost in the same thoughts, getting more frustrated, getting nowhere. I needed to see her. I needed to understand what was happening. When I arrived, I knocked on the door, my stomach twisting. Her mother answered, but she didn't say much. She just looked at me with worried eyes that made me feel instantly like I was in trouble. She stepped aside to let me in, but there was no warmth in her greeting, no comfort. Vanessa's in the kitchen, she said quietly. She's been up for a while. I walked toward the kitchen, and there she was, sitting at the table, staring into her cup of coffee. She didn't look up when I entered, as if she didn't even register my presence. I stood there for a second, trying to find the right words, but nothing came. I didn't want to make things worse. I didn't want to apologize again, because I knew that wouldn't mean anything now. She already knew I was sorry. Finally, I spoke. Vanessa, please. Let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. I don't even know what I did. The moment I said it, I realized how pathetic it sounded. At dinner, I was just trying to lighten the mood. And I messed up. She didn't look at me. She didn't even flinch at the sound of my voice. It was like I wasn't even there. You think it was just a joke? Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was something in it, something that made my heart sink. You think that's all I felt? The room felt smaller. I took a step closer, desperate for her to look at me. Vanessa, I messed up, but you have to understand, I never, for a second, thought it would hurt you this much. I was just trying to be funny. I didn't think. She finally looked up at me. But her eyes weren't full of anger. They were full of disappointment. And that was worse than anything else. You didn't think, Jared, she said, her voice rough. That's the problem. You never think. You just say things. You think it's all just a joke. But this time, you went too far. You humiliated me. And I don't know how to get past that. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. The silence afterward was suffocating. I wanted to tell her I could fix it, that we could get through this. But the way she looked at me told me she wasn't sure we could. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Jared, she finally said, standing up. I don't think I can pretend everything's okay. And that was it. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just a fight. This was about something much deeper. And now, I wasn't sure if there was a way back. I drove home with my mind spinning, everything falling apart right in front of me. I was still trying to process what had just happened. I never thought a simple conversation at dinner would lead to this. I had gone to her mother's house hoping to fix things, to show her that I truly regretted what I said. But now, everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I knew what she had said, but I couldn't wrap my head around how things had escalated so quickly. I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring through the windshield, trying to calm down. I had hoped she would understand. But if I was being honest with myself, she was right. I never really thought things through before I spoke. I was impulsive. I never really considered how my words affected her. And now, it was too late. The damage was done. I drove home, knowing I had to face the reality of the situation. When I stepped inside, the silence was deafening. The house that once felt like home now felt empty. Cold. I went straight to the living room and collapsed onto the couch. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages. Nothing from Vanessa. No response to the message I had sent earlier. I stared at the screen, hoping for something, anything. But there was nothing. It felt like I was staring into an abyss. The silence was overwhelming. I thought about calling her, but I knew it wouldn't help. We had been through this before. I had tried to fix things when she wasn't ready to listen. And I knew that right now, she didn't want to talk. I thought about the last few months. The distance between us had been growing. I had noticed it, but I ignored it. It was easy to brush off when things still felt comfortable. But now that everything was broken, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I wasn't blind. I knew our relationship had problems. We had been drifting apart for months. The spark had faded. The bond that once made us feel inseparable had weakened. But I had convinced myself that it was just a phase. That things would get better. That's what I had been telling myself all this time. The longer I sat there, the more reality sank in. I had messed up. I had been careless with my words. And now, I had to deal with the consequences. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if I could fix it. I glanced at the clock. It was late. I knew I had to make a decision. I could keep waiting for her to come around, or I could try to do something to make things right. But the truth was, I didn't even know where to start. I thought back to that moment earlier, when Vanessa looked at me with those eyes. That disappointment. I could still feel the weight of it. Like she had already given up on me. I picked up my phone again and typed out a message. Please. We need to talk. I understand if you need time, but I don't want us to fall apart. I stared at the message, hesitating. Was this enough? Was this the right thing to say? I didn't know anymore. I hit send, hoping for a miracle. But deep down, I knew. I might not get one. As I sat there, waiting for a reply that might never come, I realized something else. No matter how badly I wanted to fix things, no matter how much I regretted my actions, I couldn't force her to forgive me. She had to do that on her own. She needed time. And for the first time in a long time, I had to accept that I might not be able to control the outcome. The next few hours felt like an eternity. I kept checking my phone, but no messages came. The silence in the house was overwhelming. I could hear every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the clock on the wall. It was like time had slowed down, trapping me in this moment I couldn't escape. I knew I had a lot to think about. A lot to face within myself. But in that moment, all I could do was sit there and wait. Wait for her response. Wait for things to get better. Or worse. She stood at the doorway, her expression unreadable. She didn't look angry, but she also didn't seem like herself. The woman I had married felt like a distant memory. I knew this moment was crucial, the moment that would decide everything. Vanessa, I said, my voice unsteady. I'm sorry. I ruined last night. I never should have said what I said. She didn't respond immediately, just stood there, looking at me. I couldn't read her. She wasn't giving anything away. I wanted to apologize more, to explain better, but I didn't know where to start. I didn't even know what I had been thinking, to be honest. I kept grasping for the right words. You mean so much to me, I said. And I was a fool to think I could say those things without consequences. But I know I hurt you, and that's the last thing I ever wanted. For a brief moment, her eyes softened, but then she took a deep breath and stepped past me, heading toward the kitchen. She said nothing, but her body language told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't angry. She was hurt. And that was something I couldn't just talk my way out of. I followed her into the kitchen, unsure of what to do next. She stood by the counter, staring out the window. I don't even know where to start, Jared, she said quietly. Her voice was slightly shaky, and I could tell she was holding back tears. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Those words hurt more than anything she had ever said before. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you saying you're giving up on us? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sighed and looked down at the floor, folding her arms. I don't know, she admitted. I've been questioning everything for a while now. We've been drifting apart. And it's not just about what you said, it's everything. The way we treat each other. The distance. Her words felt like a slap in the face. I had never expected her to admit it out loud. But deep down, I had felt it too. The months of tension. The growing silence between us. The things left unsaid. I just hadn't been ready to face it. I had hoped it was just a phase, that things would somehow magically get better. I don't want to give up, I said, stepping closer. But if you don't want to try anymore, I'll respect that. Just, please don't make any decisions until you've had time to think. Vanessa looked at me, and for a moment, her eyes were filled with sadness and uncertainty. She didn't say anything. Instead, she turned back to the window. I need space, Jared, she said after a long silence. I need to think about everything. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. My heart sank. I started, trying to process her words. You mean you need time apart? I don't know, she replied, her voice distant. I just need to figure things out. I don't know what I want right now. I nodded, even though the weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had always feared that this would be the outcome. I had spent too much time ignoring the signs, not realizing how much damage I had done by not addressing our issues sooner. Vanessa left the kitchen and headed upstairs without another word. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do next. My mind raced with a million thoughts. Should I leave her alone? Should I give her the space she asked for? I walked back to the living room and sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. Everything felt like it was falling apart. The silence in the house was suffocating. I kept replaying her words over and over. I need space. At first, it sounded harmless. But now, it felt like the beginning of the end. I didn't want this. I didn't want to lose her. But I couldn't force her to feel something she didn't anymore. I had already done enough damage. Now, all I could do was wait. Wait and see if time and distance could heal what I had broken. I glanced at the clock. Hours had passed, but it felt like no time at all. My phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a message from her. Just a reminder about an appointment later in the day. I didn't care. Nothing else mattered right now. The only thing that mattered was whether Vanessa would come back to me. And as I sat there, waiting for an answer that might never come, I couldn't help but wonder, had I lost her forever? A few days had passed since I last spoke to Vanessa. The silence between us was deafening, and the space she had asked for felt like an abyss. I respected her wishes, even though every day felt like a battle. I constantly questioned whether I had made the right choice by giving her time and distance. But deep down, I knew that the longer I waited, the more likely she was to make a decision that would change everything for both of us. Then, early one morning, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw a message from Vanessa. My heart skipped a beat. But I didn't open it right away. The last time I had seen a message from her, it hadn't been good news. I needed a moment to steady myself. I sat on the edge of the bed, taking a few deep breaths. I stared at the message for another minute, wondering what it might say. Then, finally, I opened it. It was short. Clear. To the point. Jared, I've been thinking a lot. I don't think I can continue this relationship. I need something more, and I don't think you're the person who can give me that anymore. I'm moving out. The words hit me like a freight train. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. I had expected this. I had known this was coming. But when it finally happened, it still felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to call her. To beg her to reconsider. To talk about it. But deep down, I knew it was too late. We had been on separate paths for a long time. This was the inevitable conclusion. Still, I picked up my phone and called her. She answered almost immediately. Jared, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I think this is the best decision for both of us. I'm not angry. I'm just done. I don't feel like I can be the woman you need. And I don't think you can be the man I need. A lump formed in my throat. Please, Vanessa. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can try again. Just, give us another chance. There was silence on the other end before she spoke again, her voice trembling. Jared, I have given us chances. But I can't keep holding on to something that isn't working anymore. You and I, we've changed. We're not the same people we were when we first met. I had no response. Because she was right. We had changed. I had spent too much time ignoring the problems between us, thinking they would fix themselves. But I had never realized just how far apart we had grown. I'm sorry, she added. I really am. But I think it's time for both of us to move on. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew she was right. The love we had, the connection we shared, it was gone. Maybe it had faded over time. Or maybe it had died long before I realized it. But it was over. I understand, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I'll respect your decision. Thank you, she said. I've already made arrangements. I'll be out by the weekend. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us feeling the weight of the conversation. I hope you find happiness, Jared, Vanessa finally said. I swallowed hard. And I hope you do too, Vanessa. I really do. The call ended. And I sat there in silence, feeling like my whole world had just collapsed.